I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And on this week's episode, I'm going to be breaking down the most recent Golden Globe nominations, giving you my final scores, how I did, and then ultimately breaking down 5 things that I think mattered and 5 things that didn't. The Golden Globes are not the Oscars, they're a completely different awards body, but they're the first kind of major award show. And they can help us predict the Oscars, at least in telling us what's still in the conversation at this time of the Oscar season. So I want to break down kind of 5 things that happened based on the nominations that I do think does matter, that will influence some of your predictions, and then 5 that maybe matter less so you ultimately know what to take away from the Globes and whatnot. But if you're new to the series, what I do every single week is talk about award season. We've broken down pretty much every single category for the Oscars, dedicated videos, deep dives on some of the technical categories that not everyone does. Feel free to go back and check those out. Still got a couple more categories to look at, but now that we're in the thick of things, I know Critics' Choice nominations are going to be coming out later in the week. I'm going to be reacting to that as well. So it's kind of in this middle of the season where we're getting nominations. I'm going to be reacting to things. I'm going to be giving my predictions, as well as doing some of the Oscar breakdowns for categories like documentary or international feature, or maybe I'm thinking about updating my Best Picture rankings maybe starting in January sometime. So definitely subscribe to the channel if you haven't so you don't miss any videos. And as always, feel free to leave a comment down below. I always love to hear your thoughts, and we got a lot of response and engagement on the last episode, so feel free to continue to do that. And speaking about the last episode, very happy that that video did well because the predictions were very accurate. Ultimately, on Gold Derby, we were in the top 4% of all predictors, about 85% correct. Gold Derby didn't track the kind of below-the-line stuff like cinematic and box office achievement, but even if you include some of those, I did quite well anyways. But I wanted to kind of mention that up top because that's why you subscribe to this channel. That's why you continue to follow along each and every episode. It's because you can find out things like what are the top, 4% predictions. We are some of the best people in the world at predicting the Oscars, at predicting Golden Globes. I've been doing this now for over 8 years, and I have a track record of great predictions. So feel free to take my analysis and use it for your own. It usually does pretty well, in this case, very well here in the top 4% of Gold Derby users. But without further ado, let's jump into things, starting off with the section that we'll call the things that mattered. Just 5 kind of movies and nominations that I think really do matter, that I think will ultimately help us understand the Oscar race. And the first one that mattered is the underperformance of Sing Sing. There is no one easy way to put it or to spin this. This was a huge blow to Sing Sing's Oscar chances. Even though the Golden Globes are a completely different awards body, the concerns were always there with Sing Sing, that it had a weird release strategy, that not enough people have seen it, that it's kind of not on streaming, but maybe they're going to put it back in theaters, and hard to say. Is its Best Picture chances completely dead? Not necessarily. I thought at one point in the season that it could potentially win Best Picture. I don't think that anymore. It's a very low likelihood that it does win Best Picture, just because it didn't get even nominated for drama and really underperformed in a lot of categories. No Clarence Macklin for supporting actor. No potential nominee in film drama. And really the biggest thing was the fact that, the movies it lost out to in drama, like Nickel Boys and September 5, those are movies that had no other nominations, just that. So it would be one thing if it missed out on screenplay and still got in for drama, but the fact that it didn't get in for screenplay, didn't get in for drama, in weak a category like film drama, it could have easily got in for. Same thing with Best Supporting Actor, I think, wasn't a particularly strong category either, so the fact that Clarence Macklin could get in there for that movie, I think maybe it just was underseen or maybe not that well liked within this awards group. And the fact that it premiered at TIFF last year and didn't do amazingly anyways, we don't have a strong kind of a festival group that really liked it, or an awards body group like the Golden Globes that really liked it. So we're kind of been theoretically saying, oh, this is a theoretical good movie for the Oscars, but everything that we've seen so far from awards groups, from festivals, is that it's maybe not as well liked as initially hoped. So I'm not completely writing it off. It still got a Coleman Domingo nomination. I still think Clarence Macklin could be a potential contender in supporting actor. The movie has been getting some good critical support, which is always helpful at keeping its name around. It does have a late release schedule, so they're putting it back in theaters. They are putting a little bit of a campaign behind this. But the fact that A24 has The Brutalist, which I think will be a stronger Oscar contender, gives them the excuse to put the money towards the campaigning behind this. Frankly, I think that this is a movie that just had a bit of an odd and maybe botched campaign and release schedule. They didn't know what to do with the movie necessarily, and it definitely hurt its kind of campaign and awards prospects. So there's no way to slice it. Sing Sing's Oscar chances definitely took a blow. Still think it's probably going to get nominated for Best Picture, but right now it's more in the 9, 10, 11 spot than it is the 4, 5, 6 spot, if that makes sense. Then the second thing that matters is Emilia Perez overperforming in terms of nominations. Now, I predicted it to get in at a lot of places, but I think it's still telling that a lot of people didn't do it because they may not have liked the movie. And I think this is a key thing that you have to learn when trying to predict the Oscars, is to try to remove your own personal opinion out of this, or to not read too much online. I've had many people in my comments or even online talking about how much they dislike the movie and how it's not a strong Oscar movie. And yet at every stage, it overperforms. It did very well at Cannes winning prizes. It did very well at TIFF, Festival Awards Body Group, that is very likely to predict the Oscars. The TIFF audience is very correlated with the Oscars as well. And then you look at here, the Golden Globes, another awards body that appreciates the movie. So at every stage, we've been told that people really like this movie within Hollywood, within the kind of voting groups that are similar to the Oscars. So why won't it do well at the Oscars? There really is no reason for it not to. And I think it's an important lesson that for some people, they don't like the movie. There's always kind of an online weird movie that for some reason gets a lot of vitriol. It was Maestro last year. It was Vice in 2018. I mean, we've been around for over 8 years, on our 9th season. Like, I've seen this kind of Oscar villain appear before, where the internet really hates a movie and they don't predict it for the Oscars, then it always overperforms at the Oscars. Vice, Maestro, these movies always get in for Best Picture. So it's just a lesson, the fact that, I predicted it in for score, I predicted it in for screenplay, I got even Emilia Perez. These are all categories where it overperformed and got in everywhere it needed to as well. I think this is a clear Best Picture frontrunner, and if you don't have it in your predictions or you don't have it in a lot of categories, I think you should rethink that and try to remove your own personal bias out of the way and look at the facts. And the facts point to Emilia Perez being one of, if not the most popular movie in award seasons so far. Then the third thing that matters is the substance overperforming. Now, I predicted it in a lot of categories. I predicted it to be the kind of new, cool indie movie in the same way Saltburn overperformed, for example, last year, or something like Promising Young Woman a couple of years earlier. And it did do that. That being said, it still is an important thing that it did overperform. There's a couple things that, didn't surprise me. It got in for comedy, drama, or getting in, for Demi Moore, for example. But I think the fact that I got in for director for Coralie Farja, the fact that I got in for screenplay, that was big, and even something like Margaret Qualley for Best Supporting Actress just shows the overall level of support for this movie. The question in the early award season was, is this movie too weird for kind of older Academy voters or Golden Globes voters? And at least from this group, it's pretty indicative that no, it's not too weird, that they are a little bit cooler, they're a little bit more international, they're appreciative of these types of stories. And I predicted it to be, and that's exactly what happened. So while I don't think Demi Moore is a lock for actress, I don't think the movie's a lock for picture, I don't think even Margaret Qualley is a strong contender for supporting actress, those three could all miss, absolutely. But Demi Moore is a stronger contender. Now she's maybe in the 6th slot. The substance is absolutely a strong contender. It's probably in the 10, 11 spot for Best Picture. The big thing for me, though, I think is screenplay. I think the fact that I got in for screenplay here definitely means it's getting in for screenplay at the Oscars. And the other one being Coralie Farja. I think the fact that she got in for director makes her the perfect kind of contender for the Oscars. International director, indie movie that maybe doesn't get in for picture but has the kind of established maybe a couple of other nominations, and the fact that it's so visually interesting and she's established such a distinct kind of world within her movies, I think that will be ultimately a strong contender for director. So while I'm not as bullish as the substance as some people, like putting in for picture right now or putting in for Demi Moore, I think it's got a clear path to screenplay and a very strong chance right now of being kind of the final slot for director. This definitely helped the substance's chances. The fourth thing that matters is Wicked underperforming. I don't think I've seen a lot of people necessarily discuss that, but for the past couple of weeks, I've heard chatter online that people think Wicked could potentially win Best Picture. I've seen serious Oscar prognosticators saying that Wicked will win Best Picture. I think that's a little bit silly, frankly. I've never been on that train. I think that it's always going to be a kind of well-liked, get nominated for Best Picture, get a bunch of technical nominations, but probably not win anything, or maybe only win a couple awards. It is the big blockbuster fall achievement of the year, but I don't know if a 2.5 hour part one based on a musical, based on a movie, based on a book is going to win Best Picture. And I think we saw that here today. It didn't overperform in any category. John M. Chu didn't get in for director. It didn't overperform in score. Jonathan Bailey didn't get in for supporting actor. And a large reason why I went with Emilia Perez in certain categories like screenplay or score is because I thought it was a more well-liked musical than a movie like Wicked. And it got 10 nominations and Wicked got 4. So I think we can kind of pump the brakes on Wicked being a potential Best Picture winner. I don't think it's going to win in the Globes. Ariana Grande may win for supporting actress, but maybe not. It's probably going to win for Best Cinematic Box Office Achievement, but that's it. So Wicked, I don't think, will be this kind of huge, massive success at the Globes and win all these Oscars. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but at least based on nominations, I think what matters is Wicked's probably not going to win Best Picture. Let's kind of pump the brakes on that. I never thought it really had a strong chance, but I know that was kind of a common narrative out there. So the fact that it kind of underperformed here in terms of not getting any key nominations, I think is telling to its overall chances. And then the final thing that mattered is Dune 2 underperforming. It doesn't matter too much, but I think the fact that it just got in for drama and score is a little disappointing. Denis Villeneuve definitely could have gotten nominated for director, so the fact that he kind of got nudged out there is ultimately a sign that Dune 2 is not a movie that's going to win Best Picture, probably a movie that's going to get a bunch of technical nominations, but I feel less confident that Denis is going to get in for director now. It seems like maybe they're going to wait for the third one to really reward him, and because that's been talked about so much that there is another one coming, so they're going to kind of do the Lord of the Rings trajectory here. I still think it could potentially win, some technical awards as well, but it's probably going to perform similarly or probably worse than the first Dune because it's a sequel, because people have seen this kind of style already. And I'd be surprised if Denis doesn't get nominated for the first Dune, but then does for the second one, particularly when the movie was released so long ago and maybe doesn't have as much buzz as a serious Oscar contender as we once thought early on in this season. Now transitioning into 5 things that don't really matter, 5 nominations and overperformances that I don't think you should read too much into. The first one going to be Challengers overperforming. I think it got in pretty much everywhere it needed to, and then got that surprise song nomination, so I'm not going to overreact for the fact that it got 1 extra nomination and it was in the song category, not a very competitive category. You're not seeing Luca Guadagnino get in for director. Josh O'Connor was a potential contender for supporting actor. He didn't get in, so I think some people, and I've already started to see this, is like, oh, Challengers, is it maybe in the 10th slot? Is it maybe a serious contender? I don't think so. It was always going to get in a weaker category like comedy or musical film or comedy and musical actress in the case of Zendaya. And we knew, or at least I knew, it was going to get in for score because they like Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, which is also why I think they got nominated for Best Song. So it didn't overperform anywhere. It got in the categories it needed to, and the categories are a little bit weaker than the, say, Oscar categories. So I would have been more interested in it as a potential Best Picture contender if it overperformed and got in for a Josh O'Connor, or maybe in for something like screenplay. But the fact that it didn't, I still think that the movie is probably a 1, maybe 0 Oscar nominations at the end of the day. Then the other nomination I don't think matters as much is Payal Kapadia getting nominated for director for All We Imagine as Light. Now, this isn't doesn't mean she won't get nominated at the Oscars. She definitely could. But there are still some things that the Globes prefer that maybe the Oscars do not. We mentioned it on our predictions video, which is why we went with someone like a Corley Farjat, is that the Golden Globes really do try to support female filmmakers. Last year, they nominated 2 that didn't get nominated at the Oscars. Year before that, or a couple years before that, they had Maggie Gyllenhaal for The Lost Daughter. Year before that, they had Regina King nominated. All those people didn't get nominated at the Oscars. So the Globes, it's not surprising that the surprise pick that they went with was a female filmmaker. And then I don't see the director's branch going for it as well, because All We Imagine Is Light is not competing in the international feature category at the Oscars. It wasn't submitted by India. So I'd be a little bit hard pressed for the director's branch to watch a movie that's not even competing in the best international feature category, kind of go out of their way to watch the movie, to recognize her achievement and to nominate her. That being said, it is an international director, and we've seen the Globes got a lot more international in the same way the Oscars have, and these international films in particular with the directing category and the director's branch usually overperform in this category. That being said, I still think like Jacques Audiard and Corley Farja are probably more of the international directors. This year, probably even Mohamed Rasoulof over someone like Payal Kapadia, because I think that the Globes appreciate the female filmmaker a little bit more than the Oscars, and because I don't think the Oscars are going to go out of their way to watch a movie that's not contending in international film and potentially nominate for Best Director. Even when you think of the surprises like a Thomas Vinterberg or a Paweł Pawlikowski for Cold War. Cold War got three nominations. Another Round got 2 nominations. Usually it's you get in for director, but you get in for international film, or you get in for screenplay, you get something else. I'd be very surprised if All We Imagine Is Light gets in for director and nothing else. That's pretty rare in Oscar history. Then the third thing that I don't think matters as much is the Last Showgirl nominations. It was always a potential contender of Pamela Anderson getting in. There was such a great narrative and a meta-narrative within the context of the film that I knew the Globes would appreciate. For me, it was Pamela Anderson or Kate Winslet for Lee. Ultimately, they went with both. It was a little bit surprising, but in hindsight, it's not a nomination that is totally shocking. It makes sense for the Golden Globes, who appreciate kind of stars and legacy, and were the first ones to kind of declare Renee Zellweger the winner back in 2019 for Judy. It makes sense for them to nominate this type of performance. That being said, I'd probably say 3 of the potential 5 nominees at the Oscars weren't competing in this category. They were competing in the comedy or musical category. So the fact that she got in a 6 expanded lineup in a comedy and drama kind of split there, I don't think this is a real potential contender, in the same way we're not going, I think Hugh Grant's going to get nominated for Heretic for Best, Actor at the Oscars. I think similarly here with Pamela Anderson. I just can't get over the fact that you have a kind of meta-narrative in the same way Demi Moore has that kind of comeback meta-narrative, except the substance is a more well-liked movie from a stronger, more well-financed distributor, versus The Last Showgirl, which isn't that well-liked of a movie, has kind of mixed critical response, and then has a smaller distributor. There's just a direct comparison between the two, and Demi Moore has a stronger movie and is a little bit more well-known as a movie star. So I think if that narrative were to happen, it would be Demi Moore, and it would not be someone like a Pamela Anderson. And then the song got in because I think the Globes want Miley Cyrus to come to their show and to sing, so kind of the celebrity factor there. The fourth thing I don't think totally matters is the performance of Nickel Boys. I think it's kind of a split decision, we'll call it. I was disappointed that Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor didn't get nominated for Supporting Actress, or Romello Ross didn't get nominated for Best Director. That being said, they were kind of outside shots anyways, so the fact that the movie still got in for Best Film Drama means it's still a contender, so that's why it's kind of a wash. A bit of a slight disappointment in Romello Ross or Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor, but then maybe a slight win for something like getting in for Film Drama. I never thought this was going to be a huge Golden Globes movie anyways. Just didn't want to predict it to be a sole drama nominee, which this and September 5 were, which is the first time that's happened since 2007's The Great Debaters, and now only the third time it's ever happened in the 21st century. So it definitely was Golden Globes history I wasn't betting on, but is indicative of maybe a change in Golden Globes. So ultimately, Nickel Boys will always be the same thing that I thought it was at the beginning of the season. Critics kind of a movie, more well-suited to appeal to the Oscars in particular at that branch rather than the Golden Globes. So I think it's kind of a wash. Don't read into the fact that Nickel Boys only got 1 nomination and go, is it not going to get nominated for the Oscars? I still think it's going to get nominated for the Oscars. Contender in director, contender in screenplay, things like that. And then the fifth thing that I don't think really matters is the Golden Globes. I think it's always helpful to keep in mind that the Golden Globes voting body does not have any overlap with the Academy. The Academy is over 10,000. The Golden Globes are about 300 people. It's completely different in terms of a small group of people versus thousands of people, and kind of journalists versus actual people who work on the movies. So we shouldn't read too much into these nominations. They give us a general idea. They're a fun award show. I like it when the celebrities do show up. But the Globes still, I think, are the Globes. Not very predictive ultimately at what the winners or the nominees are going to be for the Oscars, and they still have a bit of a diversity problem. I know that was a reason why they kind of reformed a couple of years ago, where they were found out to have only one, black member. Well, then you look at a lot of the nominations that kind of got snubbed. Clarence Macklin for Sing Sing, Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor for Nickel Boys, Danielle Deadwyler for The Piano Lesson, Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Hard Truths, even just the general underperformance of Sing Sing or Hard Truths, all movies with kind of black leads. So I don't know if they've completely reformed themselves all that well. Still clearly kind of having a bit of a bias against African-American and black filmmakers and writers and actors. So it's always something to keep in mind that when you have such a small group, even if they reform and they change, they're still a lot of the same members, and they still have maybe some of their same biases. And we shouldn't treat the Golden Globes too seriously, because it's not like the Oscars where it's peers voting on what they think is the best movies of the year. It's just some kind of amalgamation of 300 or so people. They put on a fun show. I'll give them that. I do like the fact that they have drama and comedy categories to highlight certain different types of movies. But I also think it's important when talking about the Oscars, which is what we like to do at on this channel, to not take them too seriously, not to take this completely as a gospel and not overreact too much. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know how well you did with your predictions, and subscribe to the channel. Later on this week, I'll be giving my reactions to the Critics' Choice nominations, talk about how that affects the Oscar race. Definitely a fun time of the year, so I appreciate you joining along. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.